you're going to create. It's intended to be a repository of what you've learned from this class. Throughout, and in particular near the end, is when you position yourself as the omniscient, omnipotent leader, it's a risky proposition. The autocratic leader has a tough road to walk because he or she has to always be right. And so when you are the humble leader, you recognize you don't know necessarily what the right course is, but you have a desire to get there, and you collectively you bring people on board in their desire to get to that place. This is where most of the leadership research was. And why is that? Because the trait-based explanation for human behavior is the simplest one. Okay? Why was someone aggressive? Because he is aggressive. Why was someone kind? Because she is kind. You see a behavior and you ascribe permanence to that behavior. You assume the person is that, will always be that. That is the most simple mental representation of human behavior. And so
the first leadership studies go about leadership traits that are focused on skills or personal qualities that you have or you have not that make you more effective as a leader. So either you're born with it or not. It was not that you can develop. It was personal qualities that you are born with, that confidence or communication skills that will make you a better leader over another person.
Growth mindset then is this other paradigm that we should not think of ourselves as smart. We should think of ourselves as hardworking. Okay, smart is a trait, hardworking is a behavior. Because when you fail as a hardworking person, what do? You bust your butt and keep working. To be either task or social, but the good leaders can do both, and they can switch. And I think many of you have already alluded to that. That yeah, maybe this was good for a little bit, or maybe some version of this is needed some time. The question is, can Sam Donovan transition to become a different kind of leader, or is he stuck like the Sorting Hat, just being one thing?
The ability to catch our own mistakes quickly depends on us willing to take additional perspectives about our behavior. Ohio State and Michigan State research concludes there's two types of behaviors that leaders have. The first one, the idea of leaders get the work done through people, so task-related behaviors and production-oriented behaviors. And the second one is the leaders spend their time with people. They interact with people, communicate, they show support, they guide.
Whenever you contemplate any sense of your identity or who you are, I want you to remember this video clip and this idea that you is a fluid concept right now. Okay, the version of you that will emerge from this class, I sincerely hope, is a version of you that is a little different than the version that came in. Assumption, we'll say, I hope it's true, but it is just an assumption, that many of the troubles that we experience in our lives, in our organizations, and in the broader world can be solved if we take more of a we orientation to it, or at least if we have structures that govern the we. If we have an empathetic kind of paradigm towards the people with whom we're working, the teamwork in our locations. The first point is, it's not bad to let someone else step to the front, right? And not even is it not bad, it's good, right? So our egos to some degree and political jockeying in organizations to some degree can push us to think we need to be out front, that we can't be seen as stepping back and letting someone else to take that forefront piece. In the world of teamwork, in the world of collaboration, that we have to abandon that assumption. It's an act of trust that you're going to be working together and drafting off. Are going to progress beyond what one person thinks. And that's the only reason why you would have 5 to 10 to 15 paychecks involved in this team meeting. It has to be by being willing to learn something that isn't already in your head. And so to me, the heretics are heroes principle, that's what I'm trying to drive home with that language. The person that is saying the heretical thing, the person that is insinuating that the world is very different than you think it is, that person is an asset, right? Like I say, in a CIS data management sense, that is the only new information in the system, and that should be carefully attended to, not rejected out of hand.
Number one, diversity is a powerful source that you have to be able to manage. So it's always good to have a diverse type of thoughts and perspectives, but you have to build a culture and environment that is okay with it, that is okay to have a little bit of conflict with it. Number two, how much you learn is up to you. How much you develop is up to you. How much schemas in your mind you can break is up to you. How much exposure to different ideas, cultures can you accept and learn from is up to you. Number three, people learn in teams, so train as teams. So you will always have those channels to go to a cluster of people, so the culture sticks, the change sticks.
The challenge that we have as leaders is to get people to buy in to a picture of the world that may or may not be one that we anticipate or that we think is even possible. And that what we're doing, we're not just a cog in a machine, but it's us. We want to attribute our behavior to us, that internal locus of control. Hopefully that phrase kind of rings a bell. And so, Catherine, I like what you said. They have like the 20% projects, which means basically a day a week. You work on whatever you want to work on. Knock yourself out. Figure something out. Be creative. And you're not being told what to do. This is what you want to do. By definition, that puts you in closer, at least having the choice of going into this self-actualization space where you're using these skills that you've labored to acquire and this influence that you've been given to do something that you value, that you see as important. Good. In his book is the better approach is to create a system of behaviors that you enact, and as you carry out those behaviors in the system, it'll take you to places, right? You don't know exactly where. You know the general direction those behaviors will take you. And then as the future reveals itself, you will have new choices and a new situation and new thinking and a new you. And then that new you will enact those new behaviors that are appropriate at that time.
Class number 4, 3 things. Motivation. 3 important factors. Direction. What you're going to do. Energy. How intense you're going to do it. Persistency. How long you're going to do it for. Number 2, for the behaviors you admire or what you're going to planning to do for the plan thing, you have to research habits that build the behaviors you want to do. And then you have to define how you're going to reward yourself for doing those. And number 3, that applies for the recruiting deal that you're working right now, is an example of the recruiting deal, is the expectancy theory. So expectancy theory, do you think they can do it, first of all? What reward they will get if they do it? And then the instrumental is how likely is that they do this.
Really quick points on this dark side of LMX. Trusting people isn't bad, right? And investing your leadership resources in the people that truly value it and will grow from it, that's not a bad thing. But if the basis of that allocation of your leadership resources, your attention, your support is not legit, then that is bad.
3 things of LMX advice. So be careful of who you put in your in-group. People need to earn to be in your in-group, not just because you like them or they have something in common with you have to be in your in-group. They have to earn it. Number 2, people become what you believe them to be. So they will rise to the occasion or opposite. So be careful about that. Number 3, progressive success experience. So make sure you take those in account too.
Broad perspective, that one of the burdens of leadership is you have to simultaneously understand the 1,000-point version of it, but know that you're going to have to distill that down into a 3-point story. And the tension / ethical weight of those two things is not a simple thing at all. You're going to continually be wondering, are you giving people enough of the true story or not enough of the true story? Transparency says you give them the full true story, but it's just really interesting to look at plenty of research that shows when you overwhelm the human mind, giving it facts and figures and reality, it retreats to what it knew before, right? It doesn't do what we think it would do. And so even though I'm asking you to understand the system view, we all need to know perfectly well that we're going to have to make some version of that that's small enough for other people to wrap their heads around. Okay, so the argument goes, and one of the early books that I read on this topic was Management by Storying Around. And the argument goes that human beings, long before we had written language and way before we had Excel, we sat around fires, we sat in caves, and we told each other stories. Up here is willing to say, I'm down here, is willing to be vulnerable and to say, I've wasted my money, I don't like myself in the mirror. That's stuff that leads to credibility because it's counter motive. It's not what we typically expect. And when we see that, it creates credibility.
Lecture 5, 3 things. 1. Seeing culture, seeing values is pattern behaviors that push people to go away instead of another. Number 2, valuable tables theory is comparing two things simultaneously, two tensions. One, external controls with internal controls with external stuff or circumstances, and balancing that with all the internal controlling processes to being also flexible and adapted to change. Number 3, pep talks have direction given and have to have emotions of victory. Why this is so important? Evidence, why you can do it, why you can achieve it, and then it has to have push. So let's do it now, let's achieve it now. Action.
People matter, your employees matter. It has to be something that you or we force ourselves to pay attention to, because if we just follow organizational metrics, we're going to miss a lot of these things. So very good. This idea of evidence-based management can be a vehicle for people experiencing what good management, good leadership can actually be. Now, this grows out of initially an evidence-based medicine kind of frame about organization as an unfinished prototype. When we view any decision as the ultimate decision, the final decision, it makes them bigger than they need to be. So this is a little bit like the experimentation. It's a little bit like the kind of a pilot testing kind of logic. Understand that your business is always going to be evolving and changing and becoming something a little bit different in the future. And that can help you get away from kind of an analysis paralysis place where you can't actually take action and have that bias for action that actually can be helpful, as we talked about in the nimble leadership.
Lecture number 6. This research show that not always business and strategic skills are always the ones that will help you through management. Relationship skills will get you more advantage through it, but the value of the MBA and the business knowledge is that you will be able to understand broader functions and how to brought together to be impactful in your position, and then how to that understanding that there's a reality that may be yours or maybe not, and the only way to truly discover that is through experimentation. And that experimentation can also be helpful to your business in case it's market experimentation, because it can be get you to understand that it may be other realities that are not the intuitive reality, and that can give you advantage over your competitors.
Moral intuitions. We talked about intuitions last time. We have moral intuitions that we're going to be invoking. But as business leaders, we have to perhaps think a little deeper, perhaps think a little broader. So we're going to be wrestling quite a bit between these moral intuitions and a more logical, rational, business-oriented kind of frame to ethics. So that's a really complicated world in which knowledge is produced faster than any of us could possibly hope to acquire. And what that means is all of us are stupid, right? To some degree, all of us are in a desperate race to try to understand the complexity of the world, to make smart decisions about what's the right thing, the wrong thing, and that is only exacerbated because of the complicated moral reality that we're in right now. Would be this idea of humble leadership. One of the keys is to basically bring people around you that have capabilities. They stick around because you let them have some glory. You let them take credit for the good things that they do. Try really hard to be teachable, to learn new things as they're coming at you. And when we make mistakes, we have to be willing to admit to them and move on. There. And this authentic leadership concept tries to capture that. It tries to say that the leader that's going to be effective has to be intimately connected to the real you, not just the pretend you.
3 key points about humble leadership. First, the humble leader shares praise with the team, reflects the successes in their team. Second, it tries to empower and teach other people. And 3, is willing to say when they are wrong and admit mistakes. And then authentic leadership. And authentic leadership is finding a balance between the textbook, the data research, the methods, applying those, but in a way that you are being authentic to yourself, and to see the world in different ways and be empathic with the people around you, your team, that you're leading.
He's right that we need to have flexible versions of us so we can connect to people that are different than us.